Well, good evening and welcome to a special abbreviated edition of the Daily Drum. I'm Ebony McMorris. Fisher has the night off, but I'm here. And tonight, another day of uncertainty for federal government workers as some headed back to their offices. Others were locked out of their buildings, and yet more are trying to determine if they have a job at all. All of this as the legal challenges to the Trump administration's actions continue to mount. How are federal workers fighting back? And what are their leaders saying about the confusion? What is the latest in the legal maneuvers? My guest this evening will help us answer those questions and more. And we begin with Mr. David Groves, president of Blacks in Government, or BIG. Later in the program, we will also talk with the ACLU. Welcome, David. How are you?
I am doing great. How are you this evening?
I am good. There's so much to unpack with many new developments happening literally almost every hour. But I want to begin first with you telling us about Blacks in Government. For those who may not be familiar with the organization, tell us what you do and how you get it done.
Thank you. Blacks in Blacks in Government is a national organization dedicated to advocating for the rights and professional development of African Americans and other minorities in government service. We are there to advocate for federal, state, and local levels. Founded in 1975, BIG was created to address workplace discrimination, promote equal employment opportunities, provide a support network for Black government employees. What we do, BIG focus on three key areas: advocacy and policy influence, professional development, and community engagement and outreach. As far as advocacy and policy influence, we work to ensure fair treatment and equal opportunity for African Americans in government by engaging with policymakers, agency, and legislative bodies. As far as professional development and training, we offer leadership training, mentorship programs, career development, workshops, and networking opportunities to help members grow and excel in their careers. Community engagement and outreach, BIG supports initiatives that uplift communities through scholarships, civic engagement, and partnership with other organizations committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. How do we get it done? BIG has chapters and membership throughout the nation. We have local, regional, national chapters that provide resources, networking, and support to government employees. I talked earlier about our National Training Institute. As far as legislative and legal advocacy, we monitor and address workplace policies, discrimination cases, and legislative affecting African American government employees. And strategic partnership, we collaborate with government agencies, cooperating community organizations to create an opportunity for all African American government employees. Go ahead.
I want to stop you for a second because when you said diversity, equity, inclusion, much of the fight that we are seeing happen right now is surrounding that. African Americans, we know, make up nearly 20%, over 20% of the federal government workforce, and many living right here in the DMV. Talk to us about what your members are really doing in these uncertain times. I will tell you, working as a reporter in the White House, I am inundated with emails with people saying, "Sis, I don't know what to do. I don't know who to call. What is being done?"
Which is true. African Americans indeed make up a significant portion of federal workplace or the federal workforce, close to 20%, as you stated. And a large number of them live within the DMV area. So what I would say, as far as Blacks in Government, job security and hiring freezes with shifting political landscapes, budget uncertainties, and some government employees worried about job stability, hiring slowdown, and all that. Our job with Blacks in Government is make sure that we keep our membership, and not only our membership, but any member that is in African American or minority race, keep them abreast of all the executive orders, what the executive orders mean, and have them to go out and read them for themselves. We know since probably the last 2 weeks that every day we're dealing with different executive orders that have an impact on our community. We are translating, reading those, and meeting with our legal defense team and trying to translate them ourselves. I will say that Executive Order 14151 had an update on last Thursday.
Okay.
And even with that update, it stated that each agency now has a right to look at that executive order and use it to their advantage. But at the same time, the executive order with the update from OPM was confusing. Why I say it was confusing? Because you're leaving it up to the agencies, and we know that most agencies is going to follow the leadership that comes out of the White House.
Right, exactly. And go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, many of those within the agency are feeling the threat, even if they want to push back. I know a concern that we're also hearing is that Elon Musk, who is heading up this DOGE department that has not been cleared by any type of congressional approval, is going after agency heads. We have seen people outside of doors can't get in. Like I said earlier, badges don't work. And this buyout, whatever it is, it seems very unlegal, already has not the amount that they wanted, but also has thousands of people who have already decided to take that. What is the advice that you're giving? Because don't forget, a government job used to be a career you could count on for a level of security.
So the comment you just made carried a big punch. I say it carried a big punch because it has an impact on our employees. Mm-hmm. So let's take the first part of your commentary first. We are a non-partisan organization. Let me be very clear about that, as a 501c3.
Right.
But when we're talking about our employees, there's individuals that does not work for the government have more power than individuals that work for the government. Let's be very clear about that. As far as the buyout itself, I would say this as the president of Blacks in Government: I am not there to tell membership or employees what to do. Mm-hmm. I would hope they go to the employee benefits counselor. But as the president of Blacks in Government, I would say this: you are asking us to resign and take a deferred retirement when that budget has not been passed by the Congress. First point. Second point is you're asking us to take a deferred payment when we do not even have a budget for 2025. The third piece, as the president of Blacks in Government, as a retired federal employee, so I want to make sure I protect our membership, but you're asking us to take the word of someone who has never paid their bills. Oh. So my point to Blacks in Government members is consult with your membership, your employee resource memberships in your particular agency. Get that advice, but be very careful on everything that's offered to you that may not be beneficial to you. This not only has an impact on Blacks in Government membership, this has an impact on our families. This has an impact on our communities. And this has an impact on future Black government employees.
I was going to get to that, because what does this mean as we look at what we're seeing just in a broader scheme? And how is this reshaping the future of government workers, especially for young and diverse workers beyond this even immediate crisis? The administration, some may seem, is sending a very clear message. Working for the government doesn't seem to be stable, secure, or protected, especially with DEI being gutted, civil service protections, as we're seeing, being eroded, and entire agencies shut down. Would young, diverse, or highly qualified professionals want to join government service?
So, Ebony, I would say this. Let's take it 3 bites of this apple. Okay. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility really had no impact if you look at the data on African Americans. We still have glass ceilings. We know that when we started this, that impact was not intended for us. The beneficiaries of this probably have been white females. But if you still look at the data when it comes to SESs in the federal government, 73% of SESs are white men. So don't use this as it's been benefiting African Americans. The second piece I want to say is that as far as working for the government, I would still say it's the best job in the world. We cannot let them live in our heads. We cannot let them dictate that this is a bad job, because as soon as we walk away from that job, believe me, they have a plan to put somebody else in our jobs. So as far as African Americans, I would say put your chest out, come to work every day, and do your job. As long as we're doing our job, it's hard for them to get rid of us. This too shall pass.
Many people want to speak out, though. They're in fear. I've gotten anonymous emails from people who say, I want to speak out, but I'm fearful of speaking out. Every time we turn around, there's a list made targeting certain workers. What do you tell those employees that are living in fear for speaking out and wanting to talk about what they're seeing or what they're going through?
Ebony, great question. I would say to them, protect your job first. And I would tell you what I tell my core teams in Blacks in Government. You all keep me focused on where I'm trying to get to. Let me fight the political fights. I am reaching out to other organizations, like-minded organizations, just, give you a few, our unions, Congressional Black Caucus, Legal Defense Fund for the NAACP. I'm reaching out to those individuals, our attorney that is contracted through Blacks in Government, to make sure we fighting that fight legally. Mm-hmm. But I do not want any government employee right now to try to be that mortar to try to fight the system. We had an individual last week, don't need to mention names, that got into the State Department and OPM records. We don't know what they have on our government employees. So as the president of BIG, my job, let me fight that political fight, folks. You go to work, do your job every day, and this too shall pass.
Any specific plans or actions that you can also talk about that BIG is doing in the way of meetings or even rallies that we can expect to happen?
Yeah. BIG would not participate in any rallies. I do not want to jeopardize our 501c3. As far as meetings, I can tell you right now, and I don't want to, because I have not talked to those entities, but we are meeting regularly with some heavy hitters that has legislative powers, which we do not have, and making sure our voice is at the table. I will share with you that I have a meeting later on this week with the CBC, because I want Blacks in Government, not only, even though we don't have a seat at the table, but I want them to hear our concerns that I have for Black government employees. Mm-hmm. But not only Black government employees, but all government employees, because this has an impact on all government employees. So I don't want folks to think that this attack on DE&I is strictly Blacks in Government. I want folks to know that don't get caught up for the side game and the distraction.
Right.
We got to stay focused on where we're trying to get to.
Another deadline we all know is looming for midnight unless the court steps in. What is your hope from the courts?
I hope the courts rule that everything that's happened thus far is illegal, unconstitutionally, and that I'm a firm believer in that what's been put out there on the streets, what's in the news media, again, is a distraction. That's why I'm hoping the courts will make this make sense. I do know that I'm a firm believer that a lot of things that's out there, they know is not legal. And that's why I want our members to not get caught up on the sidebar, but stay focused on the road ahead.
I think some of the issue is, even though, we talk about what is legal, what is not legal, some are fearing what will happen, even if we have a government that decides to push past what is legal and then defy the court system. But I'm so glad. I want to bring in our second guest who's going to be joining in on this conversation. He'll be on in just a second. Mr. I see him coming in. Mr. Scott Michelman. He is the legal director for the American Civil Liberties Union. Welcome to the Daily Drum. How are you, Scott?
Doing okay. How about yourself?
I don't know. You took a big breath before you said doing okay. what is in that breath, Scott? What is in that?
Oh, 3 weeks of Trump.
We are in our third week of this administration. And I know the ACLU has been busy. You guys on Friday sent a letter to members of Congress urging them to step up and protect federal workers. Have lawmakers stepped up?
Well, we need to see more leadership in terms of calling out the unlawful actions of this administration. And I understand there are lots of them. So it's going to take a lot of work, but that doesn't relieve us or our elected leaders of the responsibility of saying this is unlawful and this is unlawful and that is unlawful. And we are prepared to take them, and in some instances already have taken them to court. And, if the administration's approach to the rule of law and to complying with federal law is going to be shock and awe, we have to be ready to match that level of intensity with our resistance to unlawful actions and stand up for our constitutional rights.
We know that there have been legal challenges flying back and forth when it comes to President Trump's efforts to shrink the federal government, saying that they're looking for $2 trillion. And his efforts have come under a lot of criticism. But with a judge recently halting some of these latest moves, do you anticipate more legal challenges? What does that look like down the road?
I do. I think the legal challenges are going to continue to come at a pace consistent with the magnitude of the laws that we've seen broken. And they're, across the board, sort of zooming out for a second, we're seeing laws broken in terms of asylum law and federal immigration law. We're seeing laws broken in terms of discrimination and constitutional principles of equal protection. And we're also seeing laws broken with regard to the federal workforce and their rights, laws that have been in place for decades and principles that have been in place for over a century. So there are really a lot of fronts to this fight, and I've only mentioned a couple of them, but I think there are going to be a lot of lawsuits because there's a lot of laws being broken.
I mean, so far we've seen various courts block him at every corner. But I'll ask you a question similar to what I was talking about before with Michael, is that what is resistance? It's framed a little differently, but what does resistance look like to you? What does that look like?
Well, I think it requires an all of the above strategy. It's not going to be something where we take our actions in the courts and hopefully get our wins, and everything returns to normal or some semblance of normal. We need people speaking up and speaking out. We need pressure on elected leaders. We need people to know that this isn't okay. That I don't think anybody or very few people voted for lawlessness, whether they voted for, on this view of the economy or that view of the economy, this view of immigration or that view of immigration. We are a nation of laws. You hear that from both sides. And that is not what we're seeing right now from the Trump administration. We're seeing efforts to divide and distract people by going after vulnerable people, whether they're immigrants, whether they're trans folks, whether they're federal employees. He's found groups of people he thinks enough Americans don't like, and he's going to scapegoat them by violating their rights under federal law and their rights under the Constitution.
David, I'm going to come back to you, and both of you can chime in on this. When we look at it, because some may not really, and I believe most people do, but understand the magnitude of this. If tens of thousands of workers leave, what could this mean for this DMV economy? Local businesses, from real estate, public services, all depend on federal workers and their income. David, I'll come to you for that.
Well, when you look at federal workers, and if we happen to leave, which I hope we don't, in great quantity, you're getting rid of the expertise that shapes and makes our everyday lives. And I don't know if it's true or not, but what I'm seeing that we are bringing in 22 to 25-year-olds to replace this expertise. So, as I stated earlier, this does not just have an impact on blacks in government. It has an impact on every community in America, because whether we voted for this administration or the last administration, we depend on the federal government. We depend on the federal government to lead us, guide us, and help shape us. And you're taking a lot of that expertise out of the government. For what reason? I still haven't heard a reason for us downsizing. And if we're saying we're saving money, does that mean that if I replace the 60,000 government employees you talked about earlier, we're not hiring anyone?
Right. And then what falls to the wayside because of that, as we kind of come to a close, Scott, what are some of the legal pathways? I was telling David earlier, I've been getting inundated with people asking me what to do. I'm like, I'm not an attorney, but what legal pathways exist for workers who believe their rights, which we know are being violated here?
Well, fortunately, there are a number of strong government unions, some of which have already taken legal action. There are a number of very, very competent and talented employment lawyers in the area. There are good government groups and civil liberties groups like the ACLU, all of which have been taking stands in support of federal workers. Now, unfortunately, I mean, this may not be an easy fight or a quick fight in the courts, but what we have to remember as a country, not only what David said about all the things the federal government does for people, that the people want clean air and clean water. They want safe food and safe drugs. They want their planes to land safely and other sort of basic necessities of running a country. But also, I think there's a real constitutional dimension to the stripping down of the government workforce, because it appears from all his public comments that the president just wants to replace this workforce that he's called a cancer that began in the Biden administration with people that he views as loyal to him personally. And that's not just taking away essential services. It's putting those services in the hands of people with personal loyalty, not loyalty to the Constitution.
Look,
Ebony, if I may add, as far as what can employees do, they still have their Title VII rights where they can file EEO cases or grievances within the government. Nothing that's on the books today that can take that right away from them.
Good stuff. This is what I want you to do. And the last minute that we have, I'm going to ask you all just to give your information where people can go to find out more information, and just a quick word, 30 seconds, that you want to give to the people that are going to be listening to this. David, I'll start with you.
I'll start. I will encourage everyone to go out to our website, which is www.bignet, that's BIGNET.org. Get on that website and see all the alerts. I have been putting out regular announcements to our membership, and I just will advise folks to stay on there. We've been having town halls talking about the executive orders, but most of all, I will advise every ears that's listening to us today, go out and read the executive orders for yourself. Thank you.
Absolutely. David Groves with Big Blacks in Government. Thank you so very much. Scott, Michelman with the ACLU. 30 seconds. What is it? Where can people go for more resources if they have questions, and where can they find you?
www.acludc.org. It's where you can get know your rights information, ask for legal help, or we hope you donate to support us. We've got a lot of illegal orders to take on here, and support from our generous donors and members is how we do that.
We are out of time, folks. This is the Daily Drum for Monday, February the 10th, 2025. I am Ebony McMorris in for Harold Fisher. Up next, the original Quiet Storm with the Love King, Raheem Devon on 96.3 WHUR. Good night.